Well, hello there. You're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with broadcaster and political commentator Salma Shah and columnist and broadcaster Steve Richards. Welcome to both of you. No guesses tonight, I guess. Let's take a look, shall we, at the front pages. The Royal Rumble, put your dukes up. That's how the Daily Star reports the story of Prince Harry's new book, with he and William pictured in boxing gloves as the war of words between them escalates. Well, according to The Express, there's now no chance of Harry being reconciled with his family because he's, quote-unquote, sold his soul. Harry spills his secrets in devastating memoir. That is the front of tomorrow's Times. The Eye sums the story up as the worst crisis the UK monarchy has faced for 30 years. The Sun focusing on some specific Harry revelations, including the fact that he took cocaine and smoked cannabis. The Telegraph reports how Harry and William both asked Charles not to marry Camilla, even though they accepted her into the fold after their mother's death. But the Mail treats the whole thing with disdain. Their headline, "Oh, spare us." The Financial Times leading with the government's plans for new anti-strike laws to keep essential services running during industrial disputes. And The Guardian also has that story with criticisms from the very trade unions the new law targets. Does show, of course, Harry and William. Well, don't forget, by scanning the QR code that you'll see on screen during the programme, you can take a full look at those front pages for yourself while you listen to our guests. So let's head straight to them. Goodness me, what a day. I mean, Steve, what happened in Spain? Did they not get the memo?
Yeah, well, it's one of the many interesting elements to this story that even someone with a kind of powerful media hold as the author of this book can't actually control the narrative. And this book has emerged. People have now got hold of it and read it. And has produced this range of front pages. And it's really interesting. I mean, it's so much more explosive, I think, than some had anticipated, that virtually every front page chooses a different element to it. So, yeah, it emerged from Spain. But, of course, it would, I mean, that's interesting, but it would all have emerged anyway. And what I find interesting in it, I mean, I'm not interested in him, to be honest, I'm not usually interested in royal stories, but this is fascinating when you have a rebel within the establishment on this scale. There will be all kinds of consequences, I think.
Well, many of the newspapers going on some of those detailed revelations, including the Daily Express. I killed 25 Taliban fighters. William attacked me. He's my arch nemesis. I asked father not to marry Camilla. I took cocaine. Meghan told Kate she had baby brain, and so on. I mean, it was like speed reading for journalists today, wasn't it, Salma? And translating from Spanish too, it has to be said. He's gone full Californian cathartic download here. Why? Why does he think everybody wants to know all this?
Well, I'm afraid none of us can really determine what it is that Prince Harry wants to gain from this. And I think there is going to be some kind of backlash, I think, further down the line from him exposing, his personal, private thoughts and experiences, and indeed that of his family and possibly friends as well, and what that actually is ultimately going to mean when he looks back on this, once this is all now out of the bag. I think there is obviously deep personal issues associated with the very unique and challenging role that he undeniably has being born into the British royal family. I think there is a question as to whether this was the appropriate way of talking about this, but clearly there are going to be some questions for the royal family and particularly Buckingham Palace to consider, because there's a sort of different approach this now, and you've mentioned that it's Californian and having this absolute download and exposing everything and all his secrets and his innermost thoughts. And now that that genie is out of the bottle, it's going to be very difficult for people to sort of keep the mystique of the royal family alive in the same way. So they are going to have to consider, even if they don't respond to what is in the book, they are going to have to consider how they think about themselves as an institution now that some of that mystique has diminished as a result of this.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, how the newspapers cover this is fascinating. We know some of them, like the Mail, I suppose Mail on Sunday more pertinently, has had a gripe with the Sussexes. But Steve, what can we learn about their attitude to this from the way they are covering it tonight?
Well, even if they're condemning it, they still put it on the front page, so that the Daily Mail have to spare us, and it's on the front page, and I bet it's on the inside pages too. So they know that this continues to sell, and they will run stuff in the build up to the TV interview on Sunday, and then there will be more stuff, and then one way or another, even if the rest of this family don't respond, that will be a story too. And so it's going to carry on. And I've always wondered what would have happened if Diana had lived, because if you have one figure in this weird institution not willing to stick to the rules, it becomes a very fragile edifice. Now, she died. I don't believe in any of the conspiracy theories, but if she had lived, she would have been trouble, I suspect. Well, now they've got trouble in capital letters from her son, and there is a connection. There's a moving bit, isn't there, about how he's been to the tunnel where she died. And I think a lot of it's to do with the mother, the way she was treated. But I don't know, I've never met him, so you can't really analyse. But I think it's making the whole edifice quite fragile.
Yes, he says that he asked a driver to replicate the journey that his mother, Diana, took in the lead up to her death, saying it was in Paris, or he was in Paris for the 2007 Rugby World Cup semi-final and was 23 at the time. He also said that he claimed a woman relayed him a message from Diana saying that he is living the life she couldn't. So there's all sorts of details like that. The Daily Telegraph picking up on the please don't marry Camilla, we'll welcome her into the fold, but don't marry her. I mean, it's a case of take your pick. There are so many lines from this, are there not? But I guess the Times, well, sums it all up, does it not? Harry spills his secrets in devastating memoir. We've talked about, you know, why spill the secrets, but why be so devastating? And what impact, Salma, will this have on the royal family?
I think that the impact of the royal family in the first instance, I think, will be just about that split that we've seen between people who are sort of vehemently in support of the royal family, you know, no matter what, and those people who think that Harry and Meghan were absolutely right to leave. So we'll see a continuation of that for a while, but there's going to have to be some deep thinking, especially in advance of the coronation, as to how this perhaps changes some of the processes behind the scenes and how they think about those members of the royal family that have massive exposure to the public, and, you know, considering how they are being, for want of a better phrase, you know, looked after, and how those systems and processes are supporting them. Because ultimately, you know, Prince Harry is a human at the end of the day, and will have the same fragilities and difficulties that everybody else faces. But I mean, you listed a couple of those details. I mean, and the book is full of so many different details about his life, varying from, you know, his relationship with his brother to his own personal experiences in the army. He talks about how he's killed 25 Afghans whilst he was on duty there. And I think that some of this is also going to, as I say before, it will rebound on him, I think, personally, because he has made himself very vulnerable now by exposing absolutely everything in his life in this book. And that is really difficult to walk back from, not just for the royal family in terms of, as I say, lifting that mystique, but also for him being able to move forward now that he himself, in his own words, has put all these details out about himself.
Yes, and actually the point about I killed 25 Taliban fighters makes the front page of the Daily Mail. Astonishment, as he declares that. He's already raised concerns about his own security. Moving on to The Sun as well, another revelation which raised eyebrows about his drug taking. I binged at 17. I lost my virginity in a pub field. You know, Salma's right, Steve. You can't unshare once you've shared.
No, but he's already, if you like, stepped back from the whole obligations of that royal institution, and they've accepted him stepping back. So he's now, in that respect, I think, speaking as a celebrity, and people will be interested or not interested in that. But when he sort of shines a light on some of the things that go on or alleges that goes on. That demystifies this institution. And this institution can only work with mystery and near silence. You know, in the 90s, they were all getting divorced, left, right, and centre, but somehow it held together as, in inverted commas, a family because of the near silence. And then people could read into it what they wanted, and a huge amount is invested in this kind of institution. Now, when you have someone humanizing it to this level, as I said earlier, I think it does challenge the premise on which people kind of relate to it, those who do. And that, I think, is the danger for the royal family, the fact that he's revealing stuff about himself. Well, that will kind of interest people who are following him very closely. But he's a celebrity now. So that's the interest in that side of it, I think.
Yeah, no doubt more details will come as more people read more and translate more until we wait for the UK copies. I see that booksellers here say they're under strict embargo still, despite what happened in Spain. Lots more still to come, including on the front page of The Times. Will the nurses meet the government halfway on pay? Looking at that next. Well, welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me once again, broadcaster and political commentator Salma Shah and columnist and broadcaster Steve Richards. Back to the real world with a bump then. Steve, if we head to strike news, front page of The Times and The Guardian for different reasons. First of all, The Times, an interview with Pat Cullen, General Secretary of the Royal College of Nursing, an indication of some movement from her meeting the government halfway on their pay demands.
Yeah, I think this was always going to happen. I mean, you make a demand. This one originally was quite high, wasn't it? 18, 19% or something. And you move. That's what happens in negotiation. The only missing element in this has been the negotiation, because so far ministers in England, it's been slightly different in Scotland and elsewhere, have been resistant to negotiate at all. My guess is and sense is that that will change, and they will have to reach some sort of settlement. No idea what the figure will be, but they will have to reach some kind of settlement with the nurses.
The Times has been told that the union could be willing to accept a pay rise of about 10%. Let's discuss it. We've just had word from the Department of Health and Social Care. Their statement, the Secretary of State wants to have an honest conversation with the RCN about what is affordable in pay settlements for next year during these challenging times, and is keen to meet for discussion as soon as possible. But then they go on to say they've accepted the pay review body in full. They've given NHS workers a pay rise of at least £1,400, and this on top of a 3% pay increase last year when public sector pay was frozen. But suggestion is, of course, they'll be talking about next year's pay settlement, not this. The Guardian leading on unions attacking the Prime Minister's plan to sack workers who break strike rules. That news of today. But the big spectacle, I guess, of today, Salma, was the funeral service for the former Pope, Pope Benedict XVI.
Yes, and what's interesting about this is that the Pope presided over the funeral of his predecessor, and it's the first time that you've had this situation, because, of course, the Pope before this had never retired before Pope Benedict. And it was quite an interesting service because the Pope himself is now 86 and looking quite frail, but obviously insisted on doing this. And so many people, I know that you've just seen in your own package from Sky News, you know, Vincent Nichols, the leader of the Catholic Church in Britain, has gone over as well. So a very sort of important and historic moment for the Catholic Church. And I don't think a spectacle we'll see again, given the very specific scenario that this is culminated from.
Yes, and extraordinary pictures once again from the Vatican there. Salma Shah, Steve Richards, thank you both.